All right, we are live. Let's see, folks are still coming in. Hello, everybody. Yeah, yeah, I think folks are just joining in. Hello, everybody. Wait for 10 more seconds. I'm guessing you're working from home, Bo?
Yes, I am working from my home office, and I have two very active cats who, throughout this presentation, may try to make an appearance. I'm hoping that that won't happen, but they seem to be particularly attracted and in need of attention when I'm on a Zoom call.
What's your name?
Belle and Babu. So I'm sure you can all relate to the coworkers, furry coworkers at home, and how they have inserted themselves into your work from home life.
So let us know who is the first one to jump on so we
Yes,
know.
I will.
All right, so I think we're live. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm delighted that Bo has joined us today. Bo will be talking about programs and some of the processes, also about the higher education in the US. Bo is from University of Rhode Island. Uh, just a quick housekeeping. I'm on the video, so I'll get rid of my video, so probably that will improve the bandwidth a little bit. All of you can only listen to us, but if you want to post your question, please do so under the chat option here. Hi, Manju. Uh, and then at the end of the presentation, we can have you come out and ask your questions, or I can read out your questions to Bo, and he can respond. This entire session is recorded, so if you miss out something on the slide, don't worry about it. You'll have the recording. You can go back, have a look at it. And with that, I'd like to hand over to you, Bo. Floor is yours.
Great, wonderful. Well, thanks everyone for joining me today. And I know that these are strange and unusual times, and I appreciate that you're all trying to stay connected by Zoom to learn what is happening in the United States and our reaction as administrators in higher education. And how we're meeting these challenges and looking to move forward. And this is just one of many challenges that we've been facing as an industry for the past several years. Certainly, the geopolitical situation has been very volatile. So there's a rich pageantry of changes that are forcing themselves into this particular industry, and we have to know how best to respond to these new challenges. So the way that I've framed this conversation, and I have about 20 to 25 minutes or so to go through my presentation, is to talk about applying to the United States in general and why it should still be a destination for your students. We have increased competition now, obviously, from the United States, the United Kingdom, rather, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. But the United States still remains one of the primary destinations for international learners around the world. And I think there's many reasons why that is still a sound option for your students. So you can take a look at my little biography here. I've worked at the University of Rhode Island now for about 12 years. I come from the liberal arts side of education, having gone to a prep school in Connecticut and then college in Massachusetts. I did do my degree in intercultural communication from the University of Rhode Island, and I'm currently completing my doctorate in educational leadership at Johnson & Wales in Providence. So my primary recruitment territories do include Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and parts of India. So why study in the United States? Again, a great question, and one that I think we need to keep at the forefront of our minds as we're speaking with students and parents about the educational experience. The 4,000 plus degree granting academic institutions in the United States with a variety of different educational styles. The University of Rhode Island is a research institution, which is very different than your liberal arts institution, which focuses a little bit more on holistic learning. What makes the University of Rhode Island unique, however, and we'll talk about this in greater detail toward the end of the presentation, is our combination of liberal arts holism and research-focused study intending students to secure gainful employment or graduate opportunities post-graduation. The extracurricular and research opportunities in the United States are paramount. new cultural opportunities as well. It is a massive land mass. The United States is a massive land mass, and each state, each of the 50 states, has a different cultural milieu that are really very valuable learning opportunities for students. Studying in Rhode Island, for instance, is very different than studying in New York, which is very different than studying in California. So you really, by nature of having that US visa, have access and opportunity to over 50, if not more, cultural immersion experiences around the continent. I just want to go through the US education map because I think sometimes this is really helpful. The associate degree programs typically offered by community colleges are 2 years in length. The bachelor's degrees tend to be about 4 years in length. And these degrees then lead into master's degrees, doctorate degrees, JDs for lawyers, so on and so forth. University of Rhode Island also offers a Doctor of Pharmacy, which is referred to as a professional degree. And that program is an additional 2 years tacked on to the bachelor's degree. So again, just to sort of put into context the educational map, which can be very different than some of the other countries that your students are currently exploring. More and more often, I have seen that some students, for cost-saving measures, are looking at associate's degree granting institutions as sort of the first step into the US education market, 2 years with much lower tuition rates before applying to a bachelor's degree granting institution for that BA, BS degree. So the US style of education, again, very different than a lot of other educational systems around the world, many of which are espoused in India, as we know. The UK, for instance, very degree-based. So you know very much what you want to do from the outset. And then in continuing on, you are obtaining those qualifications that are necessary in order to function in that particular profession. The US is a little bit more of a buffet style, if you think about it, versus a set menu with continuous assessment throughout your 4 years of education in a variety of different areas. And again, this is sort of relates to our commitment to holistic education. And we'll talk about how, again, the University of Rhode Island combines the liberal arts holism with the research element in just a few moments. So things to consider as your students are applying to US schools: cost, size, public schools versus private schools. Traditionally, public schools are a little bit less expensive than the private institutions. However, private institutions are often able to leverage their endowments to provide students with more scholarship opportunities. Location, also very, very important. Is it a school in the country? Is it a school in the city? Access to the city, access to the country, around major research areas where students are able to apply for H-1B visas, Silicon Valley, for instance, post-graduation. Is it a research or a liberal arts institution? What type of degrees are offered? Do they have professional degrees like the PharmD, which is that additional 2 years after the bachelor's degree is attained? And then very, very important is accreditation. So what type of accreditation is offered by the institution itself? Is it a national accreditation, professional, or programmatic accreditation? So these are really standards of quality control within the US that are very, very important and should be at the top of your students' minds as they're searching for an institution. Are they a test optional school or a test required school? Do they require the SATs, or is that an option? In this day and age, more and more people we find are becoming test optional. This is the case at the University of Rhode Island and has been for many years for international students, totally test optional. So I want to do a little bit of myth busting, because having worked with students and parents from India over the years, I know that rankings and name recognition is a really important part of the selection process. My dissertation is actually on the importance of institutional reputation in the advising behaviors of international guidance counselors. So at some point, this is a brief aside, you may be getting a survey from me to fill out to give me a sense of what your advising practices and behaviors reflect as it relates to an institution's reputation. But what is the Ivy League? Does anyone know what the Ivy League is? It's a name that's bandied about very commonly, but you might be surprised to know that the Ivy League is actually, in its initial form, simply a coalition of athletic teams. So, we put a lot of importance upon the Ivy League, but in point of fact, it emerged as just a coalition of teams that competed against one another. A little bit more myth busting. What's the deal with US News and World Report? I know that rankings are a very, very important part of your work with students. And I want to talk to you as researchers. I know many of you have gone through the science, technology, engineering, and math side of the house. I think we have to recognize that for a study to be authentic, it has to be replicable, right? We have to be able to duplicate it. And this is the issue that I have with US News and World Report, is that their metrics and standards for evaluating institutions every year do change. And because of that, these cannot be replicated from year to year. So in terms of a research study, it's a very poor form of research, because they change every single year the different metrics and attributes by which they're evaluating institutions. It's also very partisan in many ways, with peer assessments coming from provosts and admission directors, which of course have their own institutions in mind and their own institution's reputation at the forefront. So again, I approach US News and World Report as a guide in some cases, but certainly I take it with a grain of salt. And then I just wanted to give you a sense of admission rates for 2019. So these are some of the schools that your students may recognize. They certainly carry that name recognition with them. However, look at their admission rates. So I think the important thing to remember as you're advising students about attending school in the US is to be very aware of selecting schools that meet students' expectations, meet their academic profile, and then add a reach school in there as well. So in Amherst with an 11% admission rate, that might be a reach school for many of your students. So in order to make sure that they're making the best academic decisions, to use this as a guide, but then continue to select based on different metrics that may include regional accreditations, national accreditations. Is your school ABET accredited or AACSB accredited? Because again, these are very powerful evaluating tools. They're very powerful quality control tools. And that's really what our students and our parents are after, is a quality education. So we'll talk a little bit about the University of Rhode Island and the job prospects that can emerge from attending this institution. So this is a picture of our central quadrangle. We talk about ourselves as a really small, beautiful place with big thinking. Academics, we have 8 different degree granting colleges, from the arts and sciences and humanities through to health sciences and the STEM fields of science, technology, engineering, and math. What we are extremely proud to boast is that over the past 10 years, we have invested over $900 million in capital projects. Most recently, in September, we opened our new engineering facility, which was a $125 million facility that is really very experiential in nature. So as a research institution, I like to make the comparison between research institutions and playing sports. Right, so we'll use a favorite Indian sport, right? Cricket. If you only read books about cricket, but you never actually get outside onto the pitch to play, will you be a very good cricket player? No, right? And so this holds true across our disciplines. So with students who are in engineering, we have biotechnology and research into genetics. We have computer science, where we're doing cyber research and cybersecurity, artificial intelligence. And students at the very earliest levels, freshman year, will have the opportunity to work with their professors to engage in some sort of research opportunity. We have over 500 or more internships offered in each individual college every year, and 1,100 students conduct research studies, many of whom with institutional grants provided by the university. So really engaging with professors, engaging with faculty, and using some of the best technology available in the East Coast is something that defines our educational philosophy at URI. Again, research, very, very important. 92% of our students every year, and we have an overall class of about 14,500 students. Of that, 92% participate in experiential education. Now, experiential education could be pursuing an internship or a research opportunity with a professor, but it could also includes study abroad. And we'll talk about that in a few moments. But I think what is really, really important and what defines our institution is that we are able to provide students with resume building material that then allows them to apply for jobs or for graduate school opportunities after completion of the bachelor's degree. It's having that robust resume that is all important when students are applying for jobs post-graduation. Living at URI, this is one of our newer residence halls. So part of that $900 million of investment in infrastructure includes 2 new residence halls. This is Hillside Hall, one of our first year freshman dormitories. We also just completed a residence hall in January for sophomores, juniors, and seniors that will house about 850 students. Of our 14,500 number, about 6,300 students do live on campus. For the first year, it's about 95% of students who live on campus. However, we think, again, that the learning opportunities should not be restricted to the classroom. And so students do have the option to live off campus should they choose to do so. And we find that this is also a very important learning opportunity, that students live what we call down the line, which is on the ocean in Narragansett and Bonnet Shores. And our students will rent a house with other students of their acquaintance. They learn how to pay bills, how to maintain a household. And it becomes a really important part of what they do in that process of becoming mature adults through education. Rhode traditions, a lot of school spirit at the University of Rhode Island. We have many different Division I athletics, club and intramural athletics as well. So again, I used the metaphor in the beginning about cricket. We do have a club cricket team, but the idea of education not being only restricted to the classroom, to that interpersonal activity that becomes very important when you're engaging with individuals from around the world post-graduation. Clubs and organizations are the same. So these are really great networking opportunities where students are able to connect with one another and connect with the community at large, which allows them the opportunities to learn how to talk to people from different backgrounds. And then we all know, particularly in this day and age, that the world is ever more globalized. And so that ability to have those communication skills is essential to success. We're also, again, as a major flagship research institution, really involved in global learning. And we have over 120 different international partnerships around the world, some with institutions in different countries and others with governments and state agencies around the world. We have a great Peace Corps prep program, which allows students to work with the Peace Corps in different parts of the world. We have relationships with the Indonesian government in the area of fisheries technology, where we're training individuals about how to grow shellfish and how to work with sustainable agriculture and aquaculture. So really important, very responsive teaching that meets the needs of the workforce in this particular day and age, a workforce that is more concerned with conservation, with green forms of energy, etc. So these are the areas that we are meeting in the classroom with our new buildings. But then at the same time, we're sending students abroad so that they can get the impact of those programs in other countries around the world. So bringing that knowledge abroad to teach and learn at the same time. So a little bit about the application process, and then I think we'll be just about ready for some question and answers. Completed common application, transcripts and leaving examinations, official SAT or ACT scores, the application fee, Duolingo or IELTS I would not require of students from India, recognizing that English is the language of instruction. At least one letter of recommendation, and a second required if a student is interested in pharmacy. So this is a fantastic program, the pharmacy program, because it allows students to get a professional degree, the Doctor of Pharmacy degree. They do a year worth of curricular practical training, which means they're working in a hospital setting, also a nursing home setting, and a legitimate pharmacy setting where they're learning how to dispense medication. So they could return home and they have that credential as a doctor of pharmacy. Students, middle 50%, again, keeping in mind that this is on a US scale for GPA, between a 3.1 and a 3.8 on a 4.0 scale. ACT of 25, SAT 1100 to 1280, again, recognizing that this is not required for non-US citizens. A couple deadlines to remember. We have December 1st, the early action deadline, which I would recommend for students who are interested in our more competitive programs, like pharmacy, nursing, engineering, business. These are important programs that are space limited. And so the earlier the students submit applications, the better opportunity they have of gaining entry to that program. Students who are looking to transfer into the university have until December 15th to apply, and our regular first year deadline, February 1st. So a couple, again, flexibility is really the name of the game in this time, but in others as well. And we are very willing to work with students and guidance counselors, parents, families, to make sure that we meet every circumstance that may develop. And then I think it's always important to remember return on investment. So I think we need to remember that return on investment is not just about cash. It is also about really the cultural capital that is achieved through education. We have an alumni network of over 120,000 individuals around the world, and we leverage this on behalf of our students to conduct informational interviews with these individuals who hold very important positions, many of them in some very innovative and new, unique fields. We have a program that's particularly popular called the International Engineering Program, which combines language with engineering and allows our students to travel abroad to a different country where they do a complete language immersion course in engineering. Germany is one of the most popular programs. So for a year, they live in Germany and take engineering courses in a German institution, and then work in a German corporation after they complete that first semester. So this is really great because it allows them not only to have that cultural immersion factor, but it also allows them to make lasting connections with individuals who are both URI alums and employers that they can then leverage post-graduation to get job opportunities. So with programs like this and the International Business Program, about 87 to 93% of our students are employed immediately after graduation, which is a great opportunity, a great accolade for the university, and something that we really like to make sure that our students and families understand when they're making this very challenging decision. As we said that at the beginning, it's a challenging decision to decide where to attend university for 4 years to pay the amount of money that is required to pay. We want to make sure that you're doing justice to that expense. And we like to say that our return on investment is outstanding and superlative amongst our peers in the field. So thank you again. I look forward to receiving applications from your students. I believe that is just the 22-minute mark. So if there are any questions, Saeed, I'm happy to answer them or to elaborate on any of the areas that may require a little bit more detail.
Thank you, Bo. Yeah, there are a lot of questions. I mean, I would like to begin with, what has been the impact of COVID so far? How are things going to change?
Sure, that's a great question. And the answer is we don't know. We're still trying to, the word that I've noticed has been going around most frequently, the buzzword is pivot. And we've been pivoting very well. So this semester, of course, all of our coursework has been online. No students are living in the residence halls, aside from those students who, for one reason or another, could not return to their home country. And we do have some students who fall into that position, both at the undergrad and graduate level. And in those cases, we've made sure that we've been able to place them in housing that respects the social distancing guidelines put forth by the Center for Disease Control. I know that the first session of summer coursework is also going to be online. What my big concern is right now, I'll be entirely honest, is the visa processing. I think with the embassies closed, if and when they do reopen, there's going to be a mass rush of individuals looking to get their visa, not just student visas, all sorts of visas. And though I have been told by my contacts in the State Department that student visas will be prioritized, we'll see what happens. What I think many schools are doing, and I can certainly speak for URI in this case, is that we are willing to defer admission for up to a year if necessary to make sure that we can accommodate this issue.
Right. And are you waiting for the confirmation to come in from within the leadership at the university before you start processing the documents, issue I-20s and so on?
Sure. No, we are issuing I-20s as materials become available. Of course, some of the issues have involved students who, due to currency devaluation, are going to require extra time to make arrangements to be able to show that they have the certificate of finances necessary to grant the I-20. But if the I-20, if the financial documentation, the passport, and the preferred mailing address are received by URI, and I can speak for many of my colleagues, the I-20 will be issued. We are allowed right now to process and distribute I-20s digitally with digital signatures. Again, that's going to be sort of on a case-by-case basis on the terms of the embassy, whether or not they'll accept that. But the CBIS processing center has reported that this is allowed. We will be able to provide documentation in this fashion, and it will be accepted at embassies around the world. Between policy and practice, there's an expanse, so we'll see what actually happens, but I'm hopeful for that.
Okay, great. A couple of questions more here. Ganesh is asking, I may have missed this, but are you test optional only for this fall or for 2021 as well?
That's a great question, Ish. We have been test optional for many years now for international students. So that applies to students who do not hold a U.S. passport. We have been test optional for about 10 years, which has been great. Our priority in international enrollment and admission is to remove as many barriers as possible. And we found many years ago that the SAT could be a barrier for students who are not living in an American context. It's not a fair examination. So we made that accommodation several years ago.
Great. Anshu has just posted a question, and then Kavita, I'll give you the audio. Anshu, if you don't mind, I can go ahead and ask you a question. She's asking, please elaborate on scholarships at undergraduate level.
Sure, absolutely. So again, the scholarship opportunities do vary at institutions across the US. The unfortunate part is that federal financial aid obviously is only for US citizens. So if you do have a citizen that you're working with, a student that you're working with who has US citizenship, they can certainly file the free application for federal student aid and apply for what we refer to as need-based aid that takes into account an estimated family contribution, so how much your family makes and how much they'd be able to contribute to the institution. So that's one set of grants and scholarships. Endowments are another set of scholarships. So like I said, many private institutions rely on their endowments, their donations from alumni and from big benefactors to invest in the market, and the interest provides scholarships for qualified students. So that's another form of scholarships. And then you have sort of a combination of state-funded appropriation. This is at like a research institution like the University of Rhode Island. So it's state-funded and donor-funded. So this year we've been really grateful to have received several large awards totaling about $45 to $50 million from two very well-known alumna of the university. One was the former CEO of CVS Caremark, which is a large pharmaceutical company in Rhode Island, and the other was the chairman of Carnival Cruise Lines. And so with that award, we were able to grant about 15 full scholarships this year to some extremely qualified students. And then on top of that, we were able to award scholarships ranging for, again, based on academic excellence, from between about $9,000 to $17,000 per year. So we had this group of students that were on a full scholarship, and then another group that were on more partial tuition waivers, but still were considerable and amounted to about 40% discount rate across the board. So many schools operate under these principles. It's a long answer, but I hope that explained it.
There's a follow-up question there. Does going test optional affect the scholarship chances in any way?
Does going test optional affect scholarship chances? I can only speak for the University of Rhode Island in this sense, but no, it does not. I always say, I mean, we will absolutely accept the SAT or ACT if they're submitted. If they're good scores, I'd encourage them to be submitted. If they're not such great scores, below 1,000, for instance, then I would not support sending them. I would base my decision for scholarship eligibility based solely on the results of the leaving grade 10 and predicted grade 12 leaving examinations.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and invite counselors now so that they can ask their questions directly. Kavita, I'll start with you. Go ahead, ask your question, Kavita. Kavita, you can ask your question. Your microphone is live.
Okay.
Hello.
Can you hear now?
Yes, I can, Kavita. Very nice to meet you.
Can you hear now?
Yes.
Hello.
A little bit of a drag there, but yeah, go ahead, ask your question.
Nice to meet you too. Well, a lot of universities are conducting their courses. A lot of universities are conducting their courses online. So would Rhode Island the same?
Yes. So right now, our coursework is being conducted online. It will be conducted online through the summer session, and depending on how this crisis proceeds, we may do some sort of hybridization of online and in-person coursework through the fall semester. But I think we'll make that decision once things are a little bit more settled and contained.
Okay. I have a slightly different question here, Bo, but we can switch back to our counselor questions. Do you want to speak a little bit about the trends that you're seeing in how the careers are changing, and if there's any
Sure.
particular program that you want to mention that is more conscious of that gap that's emerging in the market?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, so STEM courses have been very popular for quite some time now. Through most of my tenure in this position, STEM courses have really been the most sought after by the international student population, and certainly by parents and families. And that has been reflected in that, you know, a great chunk of the $900 million that the University of Rhode Island has invested into its community has been in the STEM related fields, with new science centers, pharmacy buildings, engineering complexes, renovated business spaces. But I think more and more often I'm seeing students move back toward the liberal arts and sciences, so the humanities courses. And this is important, I think, because the way education has evolved over the years, I think that we, in some ways, have moved away from the pursuit of knowledge with a, you know, with a capital K. The pursuit of knowledge. What does that mean? Sort of the betterment of who we are as humans, of our self-actualization. And so more and more students I have found have been advised or have recognized the value of the humanities. I've seen a huge uptick in international students who are applying to film media. So again, sort of using the balance of technology and the importance of technology as a method of communication. And so this is an area that the university most recently has invested a great deal of money in, and created a new center for, it's called the Harrington Center for Communication. And this includes our film media programs. I don't know if you can hear my cat in the background. If you can, I apologize. She's, like I said, very, very solicitous when I happen to be on a Zoom call. But yes, this is an area too. Computer science, again, very much a STEM field, but not an area that I saw as much interest in about 5 to 7 years ago. But computer science is becoming a lot more sought after these days. And I think that that has a lot to do with just the nature of our world now, that is more connected through the internet. And I think that cybersecurity and issues of this sort are very important as well. And that falls into the computer science, computer engineering realm. So those are the trends. From China, I've got to say that it used to be all business. And now I'm getting a lot more applications in art. Which is surprising to me. But again, I think that's in response to just sort of changing times and changing demographics and changing governments. And and a recognition that, you know, we have a surplus of business individuals who have majored in business and individuals who have majored in engineering. And we need those people who are really understanders of the humanities and the human condition to be able to sort of translate between those science folks and the rest of the world. So those are some of the trends that I've recognized, and I'm happy to answer any other questions about that.
Sure. Let me go ahead and invite Manju to ask a question.
Sure.
Manju, go ahead.
Hi both. Thank you so much for lovely information. It's really
Absolutely.
useful. Okay. So can you hear properly?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Manju, go ahead.
So I wanted to ask, like, what is the duration to work in Germany if one has opted one semester, as you informed, about engineering?
Mm-hmm. So that would be the engineering program. It is a 5-year program at the University of Rhode Island. So over the course of the first 4 years, the student learns, again, German as an example, but there's also Spain, Italy, these are other, China, Japan is another country that's coming online soon. But the students for the first 4 years gain proficiency in German. In that 4th year, travel abroad, do half of the semester in a German institution where they learn more about engineering. For the second half of that year, they're working in a German corporation. The typical student has worked in the automotive industry. There's a huge automotive industry in Germany, and we have a lot of connections with those departments. And so then after the completion of that semester, the student returns to the university, completes a 5th year, and then at that time graduates with a bachelor's degree in engineering, but also a bachelor's degree in that language. So essentially it's 2 degrees for the price of 1. And what we found is there's been about 100%, I think this year it was 97% job placement rate post-graduation.
Okay, right. Good. And could you please throw more, insight for pharmacy course requirement for IB students specifically and these scholarships?
Was that pharmacy that you were saying?
Yes.
Pharmacy, yes. Excellent question. So with the IB, the first thing I should mention is that IB courses, higher level, 5, 6, and 7 will result in URI credit. So if you have a student who gets a 6 in a higher level chemistry course, for instance, then that would be equivalent to our Chemistry 101 course at the University of Rhode Island and would be awarded 4 URI credits. So that's important moving forward, I think, to advising your students about the coursework that they should be taking for the following year. With the pharmacy program, I many years was the person who reviewed pharmacy, both domestic and international applications. And really strength in math and sciences is paramount. This would be the one area where I would say I wouldn't advise students to take math studies. Ordinarily, I have no problem with math studies, but this is one area where I would say students should be taking maths. It doesn't have to be higher level. It could be a standard level maths course, but I think that's very important. And absolutely chemistry. If there's the opportunity to take a higher level chemistry course, that's great. If not, then standard level chemistry, absolutely. And those are the 2 courses that are really, really essential to the pharmacy program at URI.
Okay, so as you said that it's test optional, and you look at the grades, of the student, and then the scholarships are decided. So now in this year, as because of the corona, this it's absolutely different. So A-level courses as well as IB exams are cancelled. So how you are processing for a scholarship?
Right, that's a great question. So the scholarships, we never actually see, if you'll remember, for admission purposes, we don't see what the students' exam grades are. We look to see what, if it's an IG curriculum, for example, we look at the O levels or IGCSEs, AS levels, and then predicted scores for A levels. For IB, we look at what the students have achieved in their coursework over the past 3.5 years or so, knowing that we're not going to see the final exam grades because they're usually released over the summer. our advisors will see those exam grades and they'll make decisions about class placement based on those courses. Now, this year, I'm not sure what is going to happen. I will say that we are very closely monitoring the situation with all of the testing agencies, including Cambridge, Edexcel, Pearson, and International Baccalaureate. And we will proceed according to their guidance on how they're going to be awarding certificates moving forward. So our goal, again, is to remove as many obstacles as possible. And if that means that we are changing our method and our policies for awarding credit due to this extraordinary situation, then we will absolutely do that.
Right. Thank you. When are you thinking like it can really start the physical education? They are like, I mean, not the virtually, but the students can be there. What do you
Well,
think?
sure. I mean, right now, like I said, the university has only canceled, I believe, the first summer session, and that ends at the beginning of July. So the decision has not been made yet as to whether or not classes will be held as scheduled in person for the second summer session. I think the hope of the higher administration is that this will all be over by then and we'll be able to resume face-to-face coursework by then. But we're prepared. If it's not, then we'll continue with our online coursework and then move forward throughout the fall semester, based on the guidance of the CDC. I think what is important about this, though, is that a lot of institutions and URI, I think to a certain degree as well, have really not jumped into the online learning platform for a variety of reasons, bandwidth being one of them. But this has really made us all move very quickly to become online programs. And so I think that the future of education in the US is going to be some sort of hybrid. It's going to be in person and online to a certain degree. The government, like I said, has been willing to ease the restrictions on students who are taking online courses. And I think that that's going to, international students who are taking online courses, I should say, and still maintain valid visa status. So I think that going forward, we're going to be seeing more of this.
Okay. And since like the situation is like that, so many parents are really having a little bit, they are scared to send their child for this 2022 study overseas.
Mm-hmm.
So there are many parents like who are asking if the child can study a year here and then of course can be transferred next year. So how do you work with the transfer applications?
So are you saying transfer if a student came to a university and then looked to transfer to another institution, or is going to an institution in India and then transferring to the US?
Yeah, first year in India and then second year like sophomore in US at your university.
Understood. Right. Yes. So great question. What I can say is many institutions, and I'll talk generally right now, many institutions, when a student is transferring from an international institution, will require that the students post-secondary or college or university level coursework be evaluated by a third party evaluation agency. And this evaluation agency may charge up to $300, $400, $500 to do a course by course evaluation, what X grade is equal to in the US. So X grade is equal to Y grade in the US. And then that is sent to the university, and then this is what is used to process transfer credit. What I can say is that URI now, we perform all of our credential evaluations in-house at no cost to the student. So if your student attends a university in Delhi and plans to come to URI after the first year, then they would send their transcripts to our office. We would evaluate them within 2 business days. The student will know exactly what courses will result in URI credit and where they'll place in the incoming class, and then be able to make an informed decision about whether or not URI is the best use of their resources moving forward, and will progress through the degree most expeditiously.
Great. Thank you, Manju. Those great questions. I want to switch gears here, Bo. I want to know what's going on. Give us some sense of what is going on campus. What kind of conversations are happening between you and your leadership and between you and your colleagues? Just give us some sense of how you are dealing with this whole COVID situation.
Sure. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been on campus. So all of our conversations have been remote. I think in some ways it's been paradoxical in that we are so disconnected that we've become more connected than ever. And I say disconnected in terms of being able to actually see someone, touch them, go down and have a cup of coffee in an office down the hallway. We don't have that opportunity. So again, we're becoming much more connected and having Zoom lunches where we're discussing our next moves. So really what we've been trying to do, and I think many universities are doing the same thing, is to let students know that we understand that these are exceptional times, that we are there for them, that we are going to be as nimble as possible in responding to whatever changes the next day, the next week or month may bring. And that, for those of you who have worked with US higher education, is really, I think, a very new concept. Institutions of higher learning in the US, and I would say really around the world, are by their very nature immovable. If you want to get a new course offering at a university, for instance, it's a long process where you have to submit proposals. You're submitting proposals to researchers. And so they want to know all of the statistics and all of the research associated with, the cost benefit of doing something. And so things at universities around the world move very slowly. But this coronavirus has all made us move at light speed. And I think it's refreshing, certainly. And I think that it's going to really inform our future decision-making.
Thank you, Bo. Okay,
Sure.
I'll turn back to our counselors here. Dave, you want to ask your question? Dave wants to ask a question on donors' priorities in this given circumstances, and
Sure.
how. Let me just turn Dave on. Dave. Go ahead, Dave. Ask your question, and then Upasna, I'm coming to you next. You can ask your question. Dave, go ahead. Your microphone is live. Okay, I can ask his question. Dave, if you can't hear me, let me know in the text. In the chat box, I'll see what's going on. But Dave is asking, this is his question: will the COVID-19 effect reduce next year's scholarships for international students, as the donor priority may divert to other areas such as livelihood and medical and other things?
That's a great question, Dave. And the answer is I'm not quite sure. There was a recent article in the Chronicle of Higher Education about the University of Rhode Island. And it was 12 years ago in 2008, when there was the financial crisis, we had to cut our budget by 40%. And so with the remaining money, we had to make a very strategic decision about how we were going to use our remaining funds. And what we decided to do was to invest that money into our students in the form of aid, both need-based and merit-based aid, particularly for populations that were underrepresented at the university, and international students fell into that category. And so this article in the Chronicle of Higher Education, which I'm happy to share with you all, really demonstrated how that was a risky move at the time, but it was one that paid off tenfold. And the university is now, in many ways, whereas 15 years ago, we were very much reliant upon the state of Rhode Island to maintain operations. Today, we're almost entirely tuition driven. So we were able to invest in our community. We've now received 23,000 applications, which is record breaking for us, 23,000 applications this year alone. Our class, we're about 40% ahead in terms of students who are planning to attend the University of Rhode Island this year than we were at the same time last year. And that's in spite of all of this coronavirus. So again, I'm taking a kind of a circuitous route around answering your question, but we made the decision to invest in our students in 2008 when the housing market in the US collapsed. My anticipation would be that we are going to remain very student-centered in our ethos, and continue to invest in our population. Now, this may mean that we next year are only able to award 5 full scholarships instead of 10, but we are still going to be doing what we can to make sure that qualified students are able to attend the University of Rhode Island. My feeling is that the scholarships that we provide all students who qualify, that range from 9,000 to 17,000, will remain. That is my hope, and my, having been at the university for this long, I think that will remain the case. Other institutions, I don't know. Other institutions that are more endowment focused, who have lost half of their value, I'm not sure how that's going to shake out for them. But for URI, I think we'll be fine. And I think that we're going to keep our priorities student-centered.
Okay. Next is Upasana. I'm going to bring her on. She has 2 questions. Let me ask her first question, and then she can come and ask her second question. Her first question is, one piece of advice you would want to give to students applying to Rhode Island from India?
Well, it's not going to be specific to URI, but I'll tell you. So when I was in prep school, I had a headmaster, and he was kind of a curmudgeonly headmaster that you would read about in books like Tom Brown's School Days. But he gave me an excellent piece of advice when I was graduating. And he said, Bo, at the end of the day, if it comes between taking an hour of sleep or an hour of studying for an exam, take the hour of sleep, because at the end of the day, that will prove to be the much more valuable use of that time. So again, that's not specific to URI, but I think it is, especially in this age where we really need to be conscious of self-care. That would be my advice to any student right now, is not to stress, take that hour of sleep, and focus on well-being over getting a couple extra points on your examinations.
Hang out with your cats more.
Exactly.
Take
Hang
some
out with your
stress
cats
off.
more.
All right, Upasana, second question is, I think, more not just as a counselor, but also on behalf of parents. Go ahead, Upasana. You're live now. Upasana, you're live. You can ask your question. Upasana, go ahead. Ask your question. Okay, we can't hear her. Anyway, I can read out the question that she has posted here. Upasana, I'm not sure if you're able to hear me, but we can't hear you. I'll have to read your question here. So she's asking, parents spend huge fee for their experience, for their child's experience as an international student. Do you think paying the same fee and then getting to study online will be the same for students, or are you thinking of reviewing your fee structure to match the way classes will be structured in case initial mode of study remains online? So how do you manage online, offline fee structure?
Sure. So that's a great question. I think that many institutions are grappling with that right now. My feeling is that some accommodation will be made to reduce the cost of tuition if the courses are going to be online and not in person. That would be my guess. I don't think a decision has been made yet. I know the conversation is happening, and contingencies are being put into place. But my guess would be that yes, there will be tuition breaks. And of course, if it's non-residential at that point, the money that is spent on housing and dining would not be a burden to the family. So that's another saving for the next semester potentially.
And Bo, are these fee structures already formulated or still in the works?
The fee structures are actually proposed and accepted several years out, based on anticipated allocation from the state of Rhode Island and based on enrollment figures. So they've been set for some time now. But again, I think we do have some programs that are offered solely online at URI, and those are for a reduced tuition. So my guess would be that if we do move all online for the next semester, then we'll adopt those tuition and fee structures for matriculation.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I meant, that some of the programs which are initially planned for offline instruction, if they move partially or fully to online, would you adopt from the existing online fee structures?
That would be my guess. Yes, that would be my guess.
Okay. All right, let me look out for other questions here. I may have missed a couple of questions here. Yeah, there was this question, I think, again, it was Dave's question is, I think it refers to our earlier question on if student chooses to take first semester or first year in India and then choose to go to Rhode Island and doesn't get the visa, how would that affect his or her life?
So in other words, if there was, if a student decided in September not to come to the university, to go to a different institution, and then arrive in January, for instance, for the beginning of the spring term, but then did not get the visa in that case, then what we would probably do in that case is defer the admission again for an additional semester and hope that the student would be able to start the following September.
Okay. And also, just a quick question on the timelines. Do you have any sense of what's happening in fall? Are you opening or is it going to be delayed? I think I asked that
Right
question
now,
earlier also. I just wanted to ask it again because some folks joined in a little late.
Sure. So it's a great question. I can tell you that I work very closely with the Office of International Students and Scholars, as you'd expect. And every year we do plan an International Welcome Week. And that really allows us to pick students up at the airport, bring them back to campus. We organize different shopping trips to make sure that the students are able to get the blankets and the other items for their room that they might need. That is still planning to be in effect for the week preceding the beginning of school. So it would be about August 28th. And then classes start just after Labor Day. So we are anticipating right now, and we are planning to commence operations as we usually do in September. Now, again, whether something changes between now and then and we have to pivot again, then we will do so. But the hope is that will happen.
Okay. I'll turn to Vandana now. Vandana, I'm coming to you. You can ask your question. Just give me a sec. Okay, go ahead. Ask your question, Vandana. Upas. Yeah, is that one? Sorry, yeah, that's Vandana. Vandana, go ahead. Ask your question.
Am I audible, Syed?
Yes, you're audible. Go ahead, Vandana. Ask your
Hi,
question.
good evening. So I wanted to know, like, there are some students in my school who are really very good designers and looking for designing course at Rhode Island. They might not be very good at creative writing and may not come up with very good essays, but however, I'm sure they'll come up with top-notch portfolios. So how would you evaluate such applications with awesome portfolio, but maybe a mediocre essay?
Okay, so by design, if I could just clarify, do you mean like a graphic design sort of program? I think you're
product
still
design. Product design.
Which one? Sorry.
Product designing or interior designing. Yeah.
Right. So we actually, with our admission policies and procedures, do not require any portfolios to be submitted. Those typically happen after a student has already been admitted and they're attempting to apply or join a more competitive class that's already in progress. So really for us, admission is based on the strength of the academic record, the test scores, if submitted, again, which are not required, but if they are submitted, we consider them, essay and letter of recommendation. And again, like, we're flexible. If we do really give a lot of credence and weight to a guidance counselor's recommendation and essay. And so if you write an essay that says, student may have not been exemplary in certain areas, but certainly has characteristics that would fit well with the institution and sort of our mission and vision as an institution, then that would carry a lot of weight with me as a reviewer.
Thank you. So that prompts me to another question. When
Of
you're
course.
talking about the recommendation letters from the counselors, you would definitely want to know the voice from the counselor's side. Are you open to bulleted LORs, or you would,
Absolutely.
yeah?
Yes, absolutely. And if I can just, if I can make a recommendation, sometimes what is, 9 times out of 10, a lot of the time that I spend as a reviewer of international applications is sort of trying to figure out a student's timeline. And so if a student has, as is very common, changed schools 3 or 4 different times, or there's been a year where they just really didn't perform well, and that was due to, could be depression, loss of a parent, something like that. Those are great opportunities to discuss those in the letter of recommendation. So I would err more when writing on the letter of recommendation, sort of explaining the student's history, and if there are any areas in particular that you think might cause us to pause, then those are opportunities for you to sort of give us a sense of why there was a difficulty, or why there was a change, or what have you. So I like the more sort of, okay, here's the deal, here's the student's resume, this is what's happened, these are all the circumstances that have affected the student. But at the end of the day, a great student will fit well with the university, and you recommend them highly.
Right. Thank you. That clears my point. Thank you so much.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for asking that question.
Abu, do you want to quickly recap anything on the application deadlines? Are you
Sure. Yeah,
accepting late
absolutely.
applications?
We are still accepting applications. We are still awarding merit-based scholarships. So that's important, even though the deadline February 1st was some months ago. We will continue to admit, and we always do, through really July 1st. And the reason for this is that we like to give some time for visa processing. Again, we're hoping that things will be back online by then, by July. If they are not, for whatever reason, or students are just unable to get an interview for the visa, then we will, of course, be willing to speak with guidance counselors, parents, and families to defer admission from September to January if necessary. So again, if moving forward you have students who are applying for university for 2022, I'd encourage them to submit their documents by the early action deadline, which is December 1st. But with the knowledge that for most of our programs, we will continue to admit and award merit-based scholarships through July. And again, we are continuing to be as flexible as possible given the current circumstances.
All right, great. The last couple of questions before we end this session today.
Sure.
One is, what is your sense of how American parents are concerned about? I think this question has come from some of our counselors, but also many of the parents. They're just very concerned, a lot of uncertainties. Are you hearing from some of the American parents, and what sense are you getting? What kind of concerns do they have?
Sure. So no, I haven't really been, and I do, as part of my duties during the day, I do answer phones from all students, phone calls from all students, whether they're international or Americans. And I've noticed that everyone has sort of been taking this in stride. Granted, it's only been a couple of weeks, and perhaps there's a little bit of denial, and we're not thinking about the future because it's so changeable from day to day. But no, everyone has been, I haven't noticed that there has been a fear or anxiety about what the future holds right now. Things are still sort of progressing as normal as, as much as usual as possible. But again, who's to say whether or not in a couple of weeks, there will be a little bit more anxiety. I certainly, as a parent, would be anxious. I think that the University of Rhode Island has been very good in communicating with students and families to let them know about decisions that are being made, to let them know about the conversations that are being had. And again, that's the sort of paradoxical nature of the fact that we're different, we're socially distant, but more connected and more in contact with one another than ever. And so that's a sort of a phenomenological event that I think would be a very interesting research topic for someone down the road.
Great. So I have the last question here, but our participants, if you have any more questions, please feel free to post it. we can probably take a couple of more questions. But this, the question that I have is on this healthcare issue. Obviously, this is such a huge epidemic, unprecedented, and what we're hearing is that it'll probably calm down in a couple of few months or 3 or 4 months, but still we are thinking short term now. Nobody's thinking really long term. But are there any discussions within your organization or within your peer groups about how would it impact university admissions in the long term if it were to come back? Are there any arrangements being made? Are there any
Sure.
concerns about it?
So right now, no, we are operating under the assumption, like I said, that we'll be able to resume operations in the fall. So that would be September 9th is the first day of school. But I think, like I said earlier, we have all, as an industry, had to be incredibly quick with our response to this issue, which is something that is not characteristic of higher education. It's just not. The things move very slowly in higher education. And so that's been very heartening to me that we've all been able to pull together to adapt, to evolve and change, to meet this challenge. And I think that if we could do it once, we can certainly do it again, should it come up. I think that we've learned a lot about crisis management from this virus. It may not, I would sort of equate it to terrorist attacks were never something that we really thought about before 2001, at least not to the degree that we think about them now. And so every institution, every organization, whether it's in higher education or business, sort of has a strategy, a plan in mind to address these challenges. I don't think that epidemic or global pandemic has been one of those crises that has really been thought of in as much depth as some of these other issues, but it only takes one time for that to happen. So I think going forward, we've really strengthened our response, and if it should happen again or should persist, then we will be able to be very nimble in accommodating our students' needs to make sure that we're still providing a quality education to all of those students who are paying for it.
Yeah, black swans, as we call them.
Right.
So we have this last question. I think we'll have to end it with this. And the last question has come from Manju. I think this is a good question to end this sessions. There's a little bit of hope in it and optimism in it.
Yeah.
And she asks, what career do you think will boom after COVID-19?
Oh goodness, that's a great one. What career do I think will boom? Well, so University of Rhode Island has a College of Health Sciences. It developed about 4 years ago, and so it's a brand new college, reasonably speaking, at the University of Rhode Island. And it has, in that 4-year period, become the second largest college at the University of Rhode Island. So the second largest enrollment after the College of Arts and Sciences. A lot of our students who complete a health sciences degree will then go and work for the Center for Disease Control. My feeling is that this will probably be an area that continues to develop as it has been for the past 4 years. I think that this is one that's going to be a boom. I think the other area, obviously computer science, virtual networking, I think that's going to boom too. We might be back in the age of the dot-com era, when the dot-coms were really just developing at an incredibly rapid pace. I think that the technologies that we've been able to put into place to combat this particular social distancing challenge have been remarkably effective and can only get better going forward. And I think that there are a lot of students who now are recognizing the power of these tools and will want to be a part of their continued development.
Right. I think there's a follow-up question that I think you've already covered. Are universities planning to introduce some new courses with this situation coming into our life globally? I guess, yes.
I would say absolutely. I think that probably, risk management has been an area of study that has been more siloed in nature, but I think that moving forward, every division, every major, every career training and opportunity is going to have some sort of either class or seminar about how to create within a strategic plan a crisis management policy. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Bo. That was great. Thank you, everybody. There was a great set of questions here. I think we will have to end with that. We are just over an hour, but still pretty good on time.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody.
Great opportunity for me, everyone. Thank you so much. Please feel free, Saeed, to share my email address. And if you have any questions on the university, about college admission in general, or immigration, I have some expertise in all of those areas, and I'm happy to share what I know with you.
Absolutely. I'm happy to pass it on. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
All right.
Bye,
Be
Bo.
well. Stay
Take care.
safe.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.